Hey everybody, this is Chris coming to you from Editing Central. Just wanted to add a little tagline to the beginning of this episode because this is an episode where we talk about working conditions and working hard as actors. And it was recorded before we released because we knew we had some stuff coming up. And as such, it was recorded before the revelation of a certain controversy regarding overworking in the video game industry. Don't overwork yourself. Don't overwork your coworkers. Not to say we would have talked about this controversy had we known about it, because we are not people from the video game industry, but it felt like enough of an elephant in the room that I wanted to address it, get it out there, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Coworkers or bosses, don't overwork people. That's not cool. Anyway, that's all I wanted to get out in front and say. Enjoy the episode. I love you.
I love you too.
Come on in here and give me a snuggle. Please.
Is that the opening?
It might be now. Hello everybody and welcome back to Backstage Gaming, dramatic takes on your favorite games. I'm Chris.
And I'm Dylan.
And we are two actors who love games and like to talk about the things that we do in the games that we like and kind of put those things together.
Nerds are we.
Nerds are we. Welcome back. This is our third episode. Thank you for joining us for the first time or again. Dylan, I have a question.
Yes. I have an answer, possibly.
When was the last time that you introduced yourself to someone brand new?
Someone brand new.
Yeah.
Probably at my last job.
Okay. This has been on my mind recently because, for the listeners, I recently moved to a new area of Chicago. My girlfriend is getting a master's degree, so we moved closer to her school, and I have been going with her to a lot of, like, getting to know each other type things, where I'm the guy in the room who's like, I don't actually go here.
Good old icebreakers.
Yeah, exactly. Usually they involve booze now that we're adults, so that makes it a little more fun.
I met some of Kelsey's classmates at her school.
Yeah. And then I also, this past weekend, I was at a wedding. My girlfriend was the maid of honor in one of her friends' weddings, which meant that I was at this ceremony of over 150 people, and I knew exactly 3 people, and they were all in the wedding party. So there was
love a good wedding story.
There was a lot of me kind of hanging out being like, I don't really have any way to talk to any of these people. But I've just, between those two things, I have introduced myself to probably like 100 brand new people over the course of the last month. And I've noticed something interesting. You know, when you are an adult and you meet someone new, one of the first questions that always comes up is like, oh, what do you do? And when I am asked that question, because it would hurt my soul to describe my day job and say, oh, I work in a grocery store.
I'm a cashier.
Yeah, like that to me is like being hooked up to that machine in The Princess Bride and them being like, not to 50. But so they ask me what I do, and I say, oh, I'm an actor, and I'm a voiceover artist, and I'm a podcaster. And there are exactly 2 responses to this question across my entire sample size. About 30% of people, and Dylan, I'm bringing this up because I want to know if you've had similar experiences, because I'm sure that you've had this exact same interaction.
Okay, possibly.
About 30%, I would say, are very interested, and they're like, oh, tell me about that, and want to know, do the thing that you do in a conversation when you find out what the other person does. Like,
right.
Even if you're not actually interested, like, if I meet someone and they're like, I'm a 3rd grade history teacher, like, I'm sure there's some fun stories to come out of that, but I'm not like, that's the most fascinating thing I've ever heard of. But I'm still gonna, engage with that.
I can't even comprehend what that's like.
Yeah, I'm still gonna engage with that in conversation. And
yeah.
I'd say about 30% of people manage to do that when I drop that trifecta on them.
Okay.
And some of them, to be fair, are like genuinely interested. I had a very long conversation at the wedding with this guy who was in the process of becoming a Franciscan monk. And that was coming out of a year of serving as a hospice chaplain. And like we had, like, that was fascinating. And I talked to him about that and he talked to me about theater.
Damn. Yeah.
But the other 70% when I drop actor, voice actor, podcaster on them as my career, they seem to kind of glaze over and immediately start looking for anyone else in the room that they could be having a conversation with. And
yeah.
like, this isn't just me, right, Dylan?
I mean, like, I don't typically tell people what I do.
You're smarter
it's just
than
a
me.
headache.
You're smarter than me.
Like, maybe I'll say I'm an actor, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. For me, it's almost like, it's kind of like, you know, the whole thing with, like, The Secret of, like, you gotta actualize it. So, like, if I tell people that that's what I do, then that becomes more true because, you know, it is what I do. It's what I'm trying to do.
Well, yeah.
But, like
I guess I should say that, like, you know, I do tell people what I do, obviously, but I don't really, you know, I don't really get into details. I'm just like, yeah, I act. I've been in a couple shows. It's been fun. End of story. What do you do?
Yeah. But it is amazing how many people that just seems to hit them and they just go, well, that's the end of this conversation, and then they just walk away.
I bet you're a Let's Player, too.
Oh my gosh. But it's really fascinating, and it bleeds a little bit into what we want to talk about today. Which, you know, we'll get to in a minute, but I think a lot of it comes down to, like, people don't expect to meet that. Like, most people have this conception when they think actor, they think, like, movie star. They think
right.
Broadway star. They think of, like, the end product of a career. And I think that there's not as much awareness of, like, no, there's a ton of people out there that are grinding away at it and acting and, you know, small to middling shows or even bigger shows in cities, but, like, they're not named people. You wouldn't recognize them walking down the street.
Yeah, exactly. It was like that one guy who was on the Cosby Show who, like, Fox News was like, oh, look, he's bagging groceries. Let's point and laugh at him.
Oh yeah, that was so, like, dumb.
That's disgusting.
Like, that was a very poisonous thing to do.
Don't do that.
Like,
only villains do that.
But I don't know. It's been on my mind just because I've been introducing myself to so many people, and seeing the same reaction every time has been very telling of, like, okay.
Yeah, it's always weird because, like,
Pat.
No, I mean, like, even the people who take interest are like, so what have you done? And I have to be like, oh, well.
Yeah,
I've been in a couple shows. I was in a podcast my friends made, like,
yeah,
not this podcast.
Yeah, a different one. But, like, I think that's so hard to deal with because that's what it is. Like, I know a lot of working actors around Chicago who, you know, get psyched when they're booked for 6 months, and then that 6 months is up, and it's like, they might not be in anything for another year. Or they might be cast in something new next week. Like, it's that level of variability, I think, is very strange to people who have never worked in that kind of timeline.
Yeah, you're looking for stability. While you are looking for gigs that'll hopefully get you ahead a bit.
Yeah. Which, like I said, kind of leans into the topic that we want to talk about this week.
Yes, it's time to talk about...
Yeah, we're going to kind of flip the script this week. We're 3 episodes in, and we're throwing our formula out the window.
What formula?
I know. But the last
episode didn't have a formula. Second episode had a formula. Third episode has a new formula.
Yeah.
We're like chameleons.
I mean, it's going to be kind of the same formula. We're just sort of flipping the direction. The last 2 episodes, we brought up something from our experience as actors and our experience working in theater, and use that as a lens to examine games. This week, we're going to be looking at something that appears in a lot of games and using that as a filter to talk about acting and to talk about making a career in this weird world that a lot of people don't realize exists. More on the angle of bringing you backstage and showing you what we're doing day to day as actors. Not even so much on stage or artistically, just like in life. But yeah, Dylan.
Yep.
If I said I wanted to go grind, what do I mean?
Well, when I think of grinding, I think of level grinding and 6 skate tricks, but mostly level grinding.
And busting it out on the rails with my boy Tony.
Sonic Adventure 2, you know, gotta get those soap shoes. Did you know about that?
Yes, I did. You've told me.
Good.
It's amazing. I want them.
Just making sure. Google soap shoes, everyone.
But anyway, grinding is a thing that shows up in a lot of games, typically games with some level of like RPG elements, role-playing game for those of you who are not as much into that. But generally, it really originated with old school RPGs like Final Fantasy and...
Actually, it started with Dragon Quest.
But yeah, so the idea is in these games, every fight you have, every encounter you survive, you gain experience points, and those experience points level you up. Leveling up makes you stronger, and allows you to fight harder and harder things. And there are a lot of RPGs that require you to kind of do that over and over and over again. If you just play the game through and experience random encounters at the rate that they happen as you are traveling efficiently from place to place, you will not be strong enough to overcome some of the challenges that the game puts in your way. And it's a way of incentivizing you to spend more time in the world, to spend more time exploring, to encounter more enemies, to become stronger, and therefore to be able to take on the next challenge. There's also an element of it's not always experience points. Some games it will be resources, some games it will be money. But it's all, repeating the same action or similar actions over and over again in order to become more powerful and be able to overcome obstacles that the game places in front of you more easily. Yeah. And that is, in a nutshell, what we as actors are doing every goddamn day of our lives.
Yeah.
To build a metaphor and then immediately stretch it beyond comprehension, if getting what I will call a traditional career, and this means, a ton of different things, I'm being ridiculously general right now, but to get a career like, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a mechanic, or I want to be a teacher, whatever that happens to be, where there is like an end goal where it's like, now I am a teacher. It requires a certain amount of work and time investment, and that's going to be in the form of schooling, it's going to be in the form of internships, it's going to be in the form of postgraduate work for some things, it's going to be in the case in the form of apprenticeships for some things. There's all of these steps that you do, and then you reach a point and it's like, okay, now I am whatever.
I am this now.
If you're going into, and we're probably going to say acting a lot this episode, but really anytime we say that, like, you can superimpose the word like the arts more generally. Yeah. Obviously, all we can really speak to is acting, but like I have a lot of friends who are visual artists or dancers or musicians or writers, choreographers. Like really, any artistic career is going to fall into this sort of category as well. We're just going to talk about it as acting as sort of shorthand because that's what we can actually be more authoritative on.
But we love you all.
Yeah. Anyone, go hug your artist friend. They will probably love it.
Unless
you know that they won't love it, in which case don't hug them and say that we did it. Like, but like if you're going into any traditional career, and I'm lumping them all together here, and I'm being very overly general, there's a point you hit where it's like, aha, now I am the thing. Now I am the head mechanic at this garage, or now I am an endowed professor at this university, or now I am a teacher at the level that I am comfortable with, whatever that is for you. And then, not to say that the work stops, but the striving and, to use our metaphor that we're establishing, the grind has kind of stopped for you. You got there, and you're there, and it's still work, and you're still doing what you gotta do, but there's a certain level of, like, you have hit the plateau where you want to rest. If you're going into the arts, you get through all of the training, you get through all of the schooling, and then it's just all grind and all trying to get up, and that there's, like, I call myself an actor now, but I still have a day job, because a lot of times acting don't pay the bills super great. And so, like, that is how I identify, but it is not what I'm able to spend 100% of my time doing, because that's not how the world works. If it was, I would be a much happier person. But in the arts, there's this constant, like, you always have to be making, you always have to be creating, you always have to be taking classes or absorbing texts or going to shows or viewing other people's arts or getting criticism or whatever it is for you to always be trying to put that next foot in front of the other. And it's like getting a general career, getting a traditional career is like playing to beat a given Final Fantasy game.
I would say that, yeah.
Going into the arts is like firing up an infinite boss rush and having to grind to beat every boss, and every time you like have ground up and are like, aha, I've gained a new skill, I've gotten a little bit better, there's another step to take, and another, and another, and another. And I know that the arts are not unique in that, but the degree to which it's so hard to quantify, like, ah, yes, and now I am here, makes it feel like it's just...
kind of like the saying, do what you love, means one thing if, like, what you love is, you know, I don't know, and I feel like if anyone hears this and they're like, it's a lot harder than you think, then please correct me, but, like, I feel like doing what you love as it applies to, like, medicine or being an architect or something is very different from doing what you love that is, like, you know, drawing for a living, and then also on the side doing this, and this.
Yeah. And, like, let's be very clear. We're not trying to be like, acting so much harder than all of you people with full-time jobs and offices and, you know.
You want to do that without the lisp?
No, I'm gonna commit to that character.
Okay, well.
We're not saying that. I've had a lot of different weird jobs, and I'm gonna tell you right out the bat, hardest one I ever had was working in a factory, and goddamn, you have it way rougher than me as an actor who's like, I talk into a microphone one day a week, and then I go and talk in front of people a couple times when I get the option to, and that's what I do. No.
Sorry, I was just gonna say it's weird because I feel like the factory job I had might have been one of the best jobs I've had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, you know, we got, like, regular breaks, like, regular scheduled breaks. I didn't have to talk to people.
It's a big bonus over customer service, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, like, you know, like, it was cool. Most of the people there were nice. I think some of them were trying to con me, but you know what? That's fine.
Gotta keep the grift alive.
Gotta...
ABG, always be grifting.
Yeah, that's how that goes.
I don't know. I guess my factory job mostly stunk for the environment in that it was never below 98 degrees, and I worked for 12 hours.
I was, like... It was a swamp in there, and I was covered in sawdust, and that sucked. But, like, you know, when I think about it compared to my last job...
I did teach myself to whistle working in that factory, so, you know, I got something out of
good.
it.
Yeah, you got a meaningful life skill out of that. Put that on your acting resume.
But anyway, all this is to say, we're not trying to place a career in the arts, like, we are not comparing in any quantifiable sense against any other career path. We're not saying it's harder, we're not saying it's easier, we're just saying that it is different.
Yes.
It is a fundamentally different thing to be trying to do, and what it asks of you to a certain degree is fundamentally different. This podcast is kind of a perfect example. Like, this podcast is not something we are doing to make money. We are actively paying money to be able to provide this podcast to you through the things like, you know, website hosting and stuff like that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Enjoy your free media. But there's this sense, at least for me, and I'm sure you feel kind of the same way, Dylan, if I am not doing something creative, if I'm not creating, a little piece of me starts to, like, shrivel up and die.
Yeah.
And, like...
Yeah, I feel that. And that's, like, be it performance or, like, just, like, even just thinking about creativity.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be performance. Even, like, going to auditions can be like a pep up, even if nothing comes of that audition. You still, like, you're out there and you're doing your job and you're plying your trade. And so this podcast is a perfect example of, like, we wanted to make something. We had a lot of ideas. We wanted to be creative and apply what we do without having to be asked to by someone with power.
Right.
But, like, I know so many people in this city who are, you know, working temp jobs 9 to 5 and then in shows from, like, you know, rehearsals from 6 to 10 4 days a week and performances from 7 to 10 the other 3, and in between that they're also going to auditions and, like, making their own stuff, and it is kind of ridiculous. Like, even me when I'm not...
Yeah, that sounds grueling.
Yeah, like, even when I'm not in a show, like, I haven't been in a play in quite some time. I'm working 40 hours a week and then also checking audition listings and emailing audition like casting directors and working on this podcast and editing it together for the last few weeks and submitting voiceover auditions and I'm willing to bet most anyone out there who identifies as an artist can relate to this. You're basically working like 2 or 3 full-time jobs all the time.
Yeah.
To take us back to another gaming metaphor, it's almost like you fire up Pokemon Red and they're just like, okay, the Elite Four is up there, but there's no gyms to guide your leveling. There's no easy milestones.
There's it's not, you don't get this badge and then this badge. It's,
it's hard, and
when you're ready, the Elite Four will let you know.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that is so challenging. Like I was saying when we were talking about, introducing yourself, people have this idea of oh, an actor is someone who has made it and someone who I would recognize walking down the street. And the thing that's kind of crazy and the thing that makes this so hard is there's no timeline for that. For some people, it might, you might be in the right place at the right time in front of the right casting director, and then you're a name actor at age 30, which happens to a lot of people, or even younger.
Yeah.
And
honestly, congrats to those people.
Yeah, fantastic. Or you can be someone like Morgan Freeman, who didn't have a major film role until he was 50.
Yeah.
There's such a huge standard deviation of when success can happen to you as a theater maker or as any artist. And that is equal parts really exciting and also incredibly frustrating and demoralizing sometimes.
So I guess when I think about life and trying to build myself up without overextending, I think about the relationship in a game like Dragon Quest where it's all about resource management.
Yep.
You gotta not only it's not enough to make sure that you are healthy, you have to have enough money to be able to afford healing at the inn, which I guess in this metaphor we can take to mean rent. That's important.
Yep.
You have your MP, so that's mental health. You are constantly draining these resources, whether it is by your hand or by external forces, i.e. enemies beating you down.
Read bosses at day jobs.
Exactly. When I refer to the grind, I usually think about this ability to know your limit. It's it's one thing to kind of overextend yourself, but then at least in Dragon Quest you get taken out by an enemy and then you wake up in a church with half your money gone. I don't know if that has a metaphor. Think about it.
Friendly muggers?
Nice muggers.
But I think that's very apt, because I've been talking a lot about working all the time, double day job, always grinding.
Yeah.
Burnout's real, man.
It's not good.
I say again, if you have an artist friend and you know they'd be about a hug, go give them a hug. It's rough out there.
In these streets, money.
No, I always know I can count on you.
Yeah, I got you.
But mental health is important, and that resource management allegory is apt, because if you run out of one of those things, it don't go well.
Yeah. For context, I recently had to quit my job because they basically transferred me. I got a promotion, but they transferred me to a location deep within downtown Chicago. And it was fine at first, but between the travel from where I live to where I work, it's roughly an hour and a half, and I've been closing constantly, so put that to 2 hours because one of the train lines I take closes.
City commutes ain't no joke, fam.
It's no joke. So this was a job that, while it was giving me money, I was also spending more money to get there, and also spending mental health, and also probably some of my physical health, because I was losing sleep too. So if you are in over your head, don't overextend. I guess to use video games again, because this is a video game podcast, I was a level... I'll give myself some credit. I was a level 30 character in a level 50 dungeon.
You know, there's a degree in video games and in life. Hard work in the wrong circumstances can only get you so far. So as your friend, I'm very glad that you're not working for that shit company anymore. I'm sad that it means you have to move away, but who knows? Time is weird, and time is not a river that runs straight and true in one direction, and we will see you again either here in Chicago or maybe we'll meet up in LA, or we're going to be making this podcast, so we're going to be talking to each other forever. I knew you. Thank you for listening to the finale. 3 episodes. But no, so, Dylan's heading back to Cleveland, where, honestly, he had more time and more energy and more success in theater than he did in Chicago, so, that good.
It's true.
But yeah, it's all about that resource management. It's all about... I think it's also about knowing what your strengths are. To go back to my Pokemon analogy, you are going to have, in any artistic career, and maybe this turns into a motivational cast for all you young, aspiring artists out there. I don't know. You're going to have different things that you try out, and you're going to have different skill levels at that. And right now, I've been focusing mostly on stage acting since I've been in Chicago. And so maybe my stage acting Rattata is
in the top percent.
He's in the top percent of Rattatas. He's not at all. I'm going to shoot a number out there. Level 30 Rattata. Strong Rattata. Mighty Rattata. I've only, in the last 6 or 7 months, been dipping my toes more into voiceover. So my voiceover Dugdrio is, that's not even, hang on. Is it Dugdrio a thing? That is, right?
Yeah, Dugdrio's the thing.
Okay. I also remember there was Dodrio.
It's like the 3-headed Diglett.
Yeah, I was worried for a moment that I was worried for a moment that I was conflating it with Doduo, and so I was like, oh no, they're gonna know I'm a fraud.
I haven't played Pokemon in years.
I mean, honestly though. But my voice acting Dugdrio is level 16, 17, and now we're getting into podcasting, and I'm probably at about the same level with my podcasting Pikachu. Get that nice.
All two of our listeners are like, about Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, but you can't remember a Dugtrio.
I'm a man of very specific tastes. But you're going to develop these different skill sets as an artist, because as an artist you kind of have to be multifaceted, especially in today's world. I can't dance, I can't really do musical theater because I can't dance, and
cats don't dance,
neither do Chris. And in case you can't tell listening to this at home, I am what you would call a bass. And I'm a true bass. I'm not one of those guys who gets up and is like, yes, I can sing into the low baritone range, but I also have a belted G4. No, I'm a bass, and there's no musical theater roles for basses.
Yeah.
There's opera roles for basses, but I don't speak any other languages, so that's out too. And I'm also not an opera singer. I've never been trained in that way. There's a lot of facets out there that it would be a waste of those resources. It would be a waste of all those Dragon Quest bars for me to go out and pursue them. It would be a drain on me that would not see dividends. So instead, it's a big part of this grind, a big part of this is knowing how to focus your energies, knowing which gym you're going into and which of your Pokemon are going to be effective and which are going to be eaten up because Misty's got powerful Pokemons and she's going to sick her Gyarados on you and she's going to eat you.
This is getting really elaborate.
I know that this metaphor went off the rails a while ago, but I mean, I don't know what else you're listening to this podcast for. We had 8 minutes of...
Not us being on the rails.
We had 8 minutes of a tangent about the Sonic the Hedgehog movie last episode. I think anyone who's still listening knows what they're getting.
I mean, the point you mentioned just now.
The point you messed up. The point you fucked.
I talk for a living. The point you brought up earlier was with the specializations and I'm not trained as an opera singer. I I guess my job is to just keep flinging out games, because I had stuff I wanted to talk about as far as life is concerned, but, like, it made me think of the Final Fantasy job system.
I mean, you can always bring your life stories in, too, but I'm so glad that you're... Because you started talking about that, and I was like, I bet he's going to talk about the Final Fantasy job class.
I have an RPG for every occasion. So I'm gonna mix this a little bit with Fire Emblem. But like, life is like the Final Fantasy jobs. The Final Fantasy job system is interesting because you can be anything you want your character to be, but like you are limited insofar as like you can only be one thing at one time. And while that is not necessarily what real life is like, I do think that, you know, each type of art or each field that you're going into, heck, each play that you audition for or sign up for, or theater company, whatever employer you're looking for, they all have like a very specific role in mind. And part of it is like, you need to fit that role. And, you know, there's a certain point where like, you have the roles that you're really good at. Maybe your base stats are for this type of character, or, you know, your base stats are, you're a tenor, so you would do great in musicals. Chris and I lack those base stats.
Yep.
But essentially, you know, you have
base stats.
Completely unintentional.
Oh, goodness.
But, you know, everyone has like their roles that they are good at, but whoever's like going to hire you is looking for how good you are in that role, and you might not be a high enough level, you might be a high enough level, by which, good for you, you were able to tackle this job.
I wish I could remember who this was. There's an interview I read with some actor. And what he said that really struck me and has sort of informed the way that I've been approaching this roller coaster of a career I'm trying to make. Your job as an actor is not what you do once you're cast. Your job as an actor is to do good auditions. And what you were saying, you know, you go into the audition with whatever your stats are. Yeah. And the people sitting behind that table, or the people receiving your MP3, or the people who are in the back of the house watching you dance, or the people who are reviewing the art that you're submitting for the gallery, whatever it is, they know what they want. They already have a picture, especially for casting situations, they already have a picture in their head of what the person that is going to play that part looks like and sounds like and moves like and feels like.
Yeah.
And there's a certain degree to which it's just luck. It's just, do you happen to fit that bill at that time? But then what is in your control is giving the best audition you can, submitting the best slice of your work that you can, so that then in the future, when that person is looking for someone and they think of you and remember you, like, that's the job you're going to get. And I thought that was, like, that's really informed the way I go into auditions, because, like, that's the other big difference between anything in the arts and anything not. You face a lot more rejection. Like, the whole job is just putting yourself out there to be rejected over and over and over again. And, like, you need to find the mindset that lets you get through that, because that's going to deplete that mental health meter real fast if you don't.
Yeah. In Final Fantasy, like, you know, you might have your job, that your base stats, your innate ability to do whatever it is you want to do, in this case act, you might have all of that. You might be in the right direction, but maybe you are not a high enough level of that particular class. Or alternatively, maybe you are in the right class and you are at the right ability, but you haven't spec'd in the right things. Like, maybe you didn't buy the right spell. So essentially what I'm saying is, like, you could be on the right track. You could be so close, and, you know, unfortunately there's just someone else who's closer, and that sucks. But, like, you know, at least you know this person. Like, you have put yourself out there, and you have made this connection with this person who's casting for other things. So like Chris said, maybe they will remember you because of how close you were.
And now I want to talk about Persona.
I was about to segue into Persona too.
We're twins.
Damn it, I thought I was being original here.
I mean, you were. That thought occurred to me as you were talking about that, and I thought it was super cool. I'm glad we were on the same page.
I walked into this episode knowing I was going to talk about Persona, but waiting for the right time.
I love it.
Anywho, so let's talk about Persona. And to preface this with getting jobs in theater, a lot of it is about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a good deal of it is about, like, your personal skill set, which can also be reflected in Persona by your different personality stats. But, you know, it gets to a certain point where, like, knowing people is half the battle.
For the uninitiated, the Persona series is a Japanese series of RPGs, where the conceit is that you spend about half the game doing your typical dungeon crawl, fight monster, solve puzzle, fight bad guys, and the other half you're a high school student. And the relationships that you develop in the high school half impact your abilities to fight and survive in the dungeon crawl half. And it's a very cool conceit, but what we're kind of getting to is there is a connection mechanic. Is that what it's called?
They're called... So
bonds,
in Persona
right?
3 and 4, they are social links, and in 5, they are called confidants. But yes, they're bonds.
Yeah, so there are characters in the high school overworld that interacting with will increase your connection with them, which then in turn gives you bonuses to certain things that are related to that character in the dungeon crawl half.
Yeah. The cool thing about, well, actually, I'm gonna put Persona off to the side for a second and talk about, like, some theater experience I had in Cleveland. The first show I was cast in Cleveland was It's a Wonderful Life, and the person who directed that play I later met in the next play I was cast in, where he was a fellow cast member. He was acting in that one, and so, you know, we've talked a little bit, and I am now in a Facebook group, and I'm constantly getting invites to auditions. I think it's like a general, like, it's a general, like, all of my actor friends are on this diss list. But, you know, I regularly get notifications for auditions that I can't participate in because I am in Chicago.
Not for much longer.
Friday.
You've got a resource for when you get back there.
Exactly, and I'm gonna hit him up and ask him, like, how things are, and, like, you know, I'm gonna get back in touch. But yeah, sometimes, you know, in some of these plays were things I wasn't seeing on most of the Cleveland sites I checked for theater auditions and casting calls. So, you know, sometimes it's not even just like, if I know this person, they're going to cast me, like, because, you know, sometimes it's not as cynical as that. Sometimes it's just like, this person knows more about the scene. This opens more doors for me that, you know, I might still not get in, but, like, at least this is another resource for me to try.
Exactly. And, like, I've had similar experiences around Chicago where, like, I'm friends with this girl who, like, we were both minor parts in a play, and now she is starting her own theater company that, like, I haven't gone out for anything for, but I've been attempting to. So, like, I have a connection there that, you know, isn't a guarantee of anything, but might get me a little bit more credence because she's seen me work and she knows who I am. I was also in a show with this guy who, one of the things that he does a lot of is he goes out and does extra work for, like, the different TV shows filmed around Chicago, mostly things like, you know, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago Veterinarian. That's not a show, but I really want it to be. And so that's how I found out about those opportunities, and I've gone and I was an extra on Chicago Med a couple of years ago, and I wouldn't have known, like, again, that's not like, it's not like knowing him got me this job, but knowing him clued me into the fact that this world of potential jobs existed.
Yes, acting is a popularity contest. I'm not about to say, oh no, it's not. But at the same time, I feel like when people say it's a matter of who you know, they're also referring to just, like, it's not you will get cast because you are this popular. It is, these many people, we're all in this together. We are going to help each other out.
Yeah, and even when it comes to being a popularity contest, it's less like you're the coolest kid in class and more you've been doing it for long enough and enough of the people who make the decisions have seen you work and liked you.
Another thing that I think is cool about Persona, and while all of them do this, I think it is the most prevalent in Persona 5, is the idea that, sometimes for your relationship with someone to improve, you have to improve yourself. So, like, you might be able to, like, talk to someone. You might become good colleagues, but, you might hit a wall where it's like, this is all you're capable of, and then at that point you have to be like, all right, so how do I improve so I can get better and get better things from this person? Which, I don't know if this is, like, if I'm making sense right now, but I think there's a certain point where, like, it's not just about this relationship. You also need to improve yourself to a point where you can prove that you are ready for bigger things.
Yeah, you've got to have the goods. You can be the son of the biggest casting director in New York City. If you've got no talent, that's not going to amount to much.
Yeah.
Like,
and so it's not even necessarily a matter of talent. Sometimes it can just be like, if I have proven to be a good actor, but I don't show up to rehearsal regularly, I show up to rehearsal regularly, but, like, I'm always, like, 1 or 2 minutes late, or, like, even on time. There's that saying, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of things you can do that will get rid of, or at the very least, like, put a pretty hard cap on the goodwill that you're able to develop in your relationships.
Like, when can they expect you to be off book by? How many times, like, how long does it take for you to kind of adjust to the direction being given to you? And, sometimes these are, like, subconscious things that, like, you aren't really aware of, but, like, it's nice to take a couple steps back and be like, this is what I need to work on.
It's very important to be able to have that self-critical view, and not self-critical so much as self-aware, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm sorry, my voice is very cracky today.
No, you're fine. Thanks for sexy audio. But, like, going kind of hand in hand with what I mentioned earlier about this is a career, acting in particular, again, that's what we know, but really any artistic endeavor where you're putting yourself on the line for a lot of rejection, and going hand in hand with being able to handle that, you also need to be able to take the look at yourself and say, okay, where can I improve? What can I do differently to improve my chances? Because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. You've only got control over yourself. You gotta invest those experience points and those level up points somewhere, and that's up to you to figure out what you're gonna do them with.
Oh, so I just remembered something. I was originally going to talk about Fire Emblem, and I think Persona ties into this very nicely. So the thing about Fire Emblem and Persona is that in some ways they are also anti-grinding games. And that's because you have very limited time and resources, and you can find tricks to, like, gain as much EXP as possible, but you are still kind of on a one-way track to the end of the game. And I think that's something important to consider, where in these types of games, you need to think, like, all right, what is my end game? Where do I want my skill sets to be? And you have to focus really hard on getting those.
And being efficient with the time and the resources that you have.
It sounds dire, but I want this to be a motivational thing, where sometimes it's, it's just like, to use the analogy and then try to retrofit it back into real life.
This is a lot of us, like, kind of much more bluntly cramming these two things together, but I've been having fun with this topic.
Yeah. I think, with Fire Emblem and Persona, particularly Fire Emblem, it's just kind of like, all right, this is what is good about this unit. For example, this mage can pierce through heavy armored knights, so I'm going to work on that. And then to cover that mage, I need to work on this and this and this and this. And so you're kind of picking your favorite units and building a team around that. And I think what is important to consider about the philosophy of that design is that in real life you need to think, what is my strength? Like, what type of performance do I excel in? And then you need to build your strengths, or maybe not even that. Maybe it's just like, what type of performance am I passionate about?
Yeah.
And you have that single thing, and then start building your skill set around those things. Like, what will best support that? Like, for example, Chris was like, my deep voice leads me to being a good opera singer, but I don't want to be an opera singer. Well, then you don't need to take opera lessons.
Yeah, like that's not what speaks to me. Conversely, people have been telling me since my voice dropped at age like 14 that I have a voice that sounds like it should be on the radio. And now I'm pursuing voiceover really hard and really want to get into doing character voice acting and, animation in video games and things like that. So you can find the things that you want to do. You don't need to feel pressured to take the obvious choice. Obviously, neither of us did. We're actors. Like, all this is to say, go out there and do. Like, if you are passionate and you want to do something artistic, or even something that you think is too hard that's not artistic, if you're like, man, I really think it would be cool to be a doctor, but I just don't know if I'm smart enough, like, you're never going to know unless you go out and take the classes and see about what pre-med's like in college, or, whatever it might be.
You might surprise yourself. And, if you hate it, you hate it.
Yeah,
but if you love it,
do something different.
Now you love it. So
there's been a lot, like, we've been talking a lot about just sort of the grind, and that terminology, like, grinding does not sound fun. Like,
no.
It is a term born of, like, you're doing the same thing over and over. You're in a grinder, just being worked down. And in that way, I don't think that it fits, because anyone who is crazy enough to try and make a career in the arts, you better believe they love what they're doing. Like, even when this whole pursuit is tiring and I need to, like, take a break from it to recharge my batteries, I'm still, at least to some degree, enjoying myself or enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
If that ever stops being true, there's going to be some soul searching that has to happen.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this slightly different take for our third episode.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep ourselves from being too pigeonholed, but also keeping at least a little bit on brand. I enjoyed talking about this. This is something that, again, one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast is get people thinking about this world of the working actor that they might not typically consider. Also, just going to say, and this is going to be a little mushy, but Dylan, I'm real going to miss you when you're in Cleveland, so I'm glad we've got this podcast, so we're always going to have to talk for at least an hour every week.
Because I knew you.
Hard end. Thank you again for tuning into Backstage Gaming. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you like what you hear, if you like what we do, please share us. Tell your friends about us. Tell your family about us. Tell people that you think would be interested to hear what we have to say about us. Tweet about the show. Share it on Facebook. We're about to list off a whole bunch of social media platforms that you can hit us up with. And please do that. We're not paying to advertise because we're already sinking enough money into just hosting this thing. We don't need to up that bill any more than it already is.
You've been listening to Backstage Gaming. If you would like to visit us at our website, you can visit us at bsgpod.com. That's bsgpod.com. You can see our bios, reach out to us, really do whatever you want. That's not true. But, if you want...
It's a world of pure imagination.
But yeah, if you want information about the podcast, if you want to download the episodes, again, sure.
Keep going. This is gold. This is gold.
Eventually, it'll get to the point where I can just improvise these jokes.
Yep.
If you want to, send us a ransom note, that's fine too.
Who do you have? You can also tweet at us by tweeting at BSG_cast. That's BSG_cast. And please feel free to tweet about the show using the hashtag BSGpod. Try and get that trending. Again, we're leaving it to you to help us spread the word about this podcast so that we have an audience to talk to every week. You can also find us on Facebook, and I actually am putting together a YouTube channel.
Ooh.
I figure we can put our episodes up there, but I also want to be able to upload supplementary videos. Next week's episode in particular, we're going to be doing deep dives into particular scenes, and so I'm actually going to record those scenes and put them up on our YouTube channel so that you can watch along and see what we're talking about. And who knows, maybe we'll do more with YouTube as this thing evolves, but for right now, I figure it'll be another place to find the podcast, and we'll put up supplementary stuff as necessary. You can also find us on, hopefully, because I'm going to submit this as soon as we go live, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and we'll see if I can track down other podcast hosting services that I can easily submit to. Podcatchers is, I think, what people are calling them, which is kind of dorky, but I also kind of love it.
If you like our wonderfully adorable Fallout-inspired main artwork for the podcast, you can visit our friend Brennan French at his Squarespace, which is at brennan-french.squarespace.com. So that would be BRENNEN-FRENCH.squarespace.com.
Also, big thank you to our friend BioQuery for the use of our theme song, Dot Sound Radio Volume 1 Instrumentality. BioQuery went to school with both of us. He's a super cool guy, and he writes a ton of super fun, weird, electronic pop experimental music, and you should go and listen to all of it. It is at soundcloud.com/bioquery. That's soundcloud.com/BIOQUERY. Also, if you like Dylan's voice in particular, go and check out the previous podcast that the two of us worked on, Magical History of Knox County. You can find that at magicalhistorypodcast.com. It's a fun audio drama comedy spooky cast where Dylan...
Perfect for Halloween.
Perfect for Halloween.
This isn't going to release by Halloween.
No, it will not. We're perfect for Thanksgiving.
Hey.
Super fun, super bingeable, 8 episodes. We made it with a bunch of friends from college. Like I said, Dylan's the main character. I was the voice director and creator and did a whole bunch of, well, actually like maybe 2, that's a whole bunch, of bit parts. A whole bunch of other super talented people helped us to work on that and did, honestly, a lot more work really than either of us. But go check out magicalhistorypodcast.com or find us on iTunes. I don't think we should plug anything else. Thank you again.
That wouldn't make sense. No.
Yeah, we're all out. Thank you again so much for
listening.
listening.
Kenyan College Chamber Singers!
Yes. Thank you for listening to Backstage Gaming. We really appreciate you hanging in there. We really appreciate you helping to spread the word. And we will talk to you next week. Once again, go hug your favorite artist. I've been Chris.
I've been Dylan.
And we've been Backstage Gaming. Have a good week.
Take care.